Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Mac and The Stallion. We're super excited to be here today. Jason, how you feeling today?
Not too bad. Not a lot has happened this week, but I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here and to talk about some NBA, NFL news because, that's what we do here. We don't really dabble into baseball or hockey or anything like that. I know the playoffs are going on, and some people might hate us for that. But anyways, we're going to roll forward with this. We're going to start with the NBA this week because the NBA has had, let's just say, an interesting week, a lot more news than the NFL has. So we're going to start with the Rockets and the Warriors. We're going to talk about the series and what we think about that. So one of the biggest storylines coming out of Game 5 is that the Warriors won the game, but KD went out with an injury. So I'm going to throw this over to you, Jason. What do you think the implications are of KD's injury, and does this affect how you view the series playing out?
If this injury would have happened, like, let's say Game 2 or 3, I would have said, you know what, it can go either way. But at this point, when, in Game 5 when KD went out, and then Steph came back in and literally just lit it up, honestly, it just goes to show that the Warriors, even without KD, can still win.
Yeah.
I think this injury isn't too severe at this point, and it doesn't really affect the Warriors too much. As much as I would like to admit it, I did say in our last week's podcast that I thought the Rockets would take it in 6, but obviously that's not the case right now. But who knows? The Rockets did win 2 games on their home court, and that was with Clay, Steph, Draymond Green, and KD, at full strength. So who knows? Maybe this next game at Houston will turn the tide. Maybe we can have Game 7.
Yeah. So originally I kind of thought this was going to be horrible for the Warriors. The more I thought about it, the more I come back to what you said about KD going out, Steph coming in, and Steph lighting it up. I think it's really important for people to recognize that the Warriors are a different basketball team when KD is in the game and when he's out of the game, because we haven't really seen that alpha Steph in quite a while. Like that Steph in the Portland series where he came back and scored 40-something after an injury. We really haven't seen that. And as a Warriors fan, it gets really interesting because we see when the Warriors have KD, they play a very ISO style of ball. But when KD's not in, you see the ball movement around a lot, and it's screen after screen after screen. It's Steph getting open and hitting 25-footers. The Warriors might not be a better team without KD, but I think they play more like a basketball team without KD. So I fully expect the Rockets to win Game 6 on their home floor. I don't really see that, the Warriors pulling that one out. They could, but I do not. But when it comes to Game 7, without KD, even if he's not there, I do think the Warriors are still going to take it because I think we're going to see a revitalized Steph, and I think we're going to get Clay to get hot again. When the moment is necessary to, those guys play pretty well, in my opinion.
You know what? You brought up an interesting point. You said when we haven't seen alpha Steph in a while. This whole playoffs, Steph, his shooting percentage has been awful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is something to really take pay attention to, and just and that is something that the Warriors need to worry about. I know in Game 5, he bounced back and was shooting lights out, but with now KD being gone, at least for the end of the series, it's a big question mark on how efficient will he be. Other players do need to step up, especially down low in the paint. Draymond, needs to step up. He had a really good Game 5,
mm-hmm.
And I thought that was so far his best game of the whole playoffs, in my opinion. He was all over the floor, getting boards, getting assists, but he was actually draining shots. So, I will say if, like I said earlier, if this KD injury happened earlier, with Stephen Curry's, bad shooting percentage, the Rockets probably could have taken it sooner. But, we have to watch. We have to wait and see, and hopefully the Warriors will pull it out. We'll see.
Yeah, I hope so too. I have a lot of confidence in Steph. I have a lot more confidence in Steph than I do a lot of NBA players, even in the playoffs where he has played not as well. But we have seen some big games and some big moments from Steph, and I think him being the focal point of Game 6 and 7 is really going to help the Warriors out short term. And hopefully we get KD back in the next round. But anyways, moving on, we're going to talk about the 76ers and whether or not we still have faith in them. So, Jason, I know you were a lot more vocal proponent of the Sixers and them winning the series. So how do you feel about the 76ers now as they continue to somewhat struggle against Toronto?
Well, actually, I was actually pro-Toronto.
Oh, okay. So I thought
it's okay.
You really like the Sixers though as well. No.
No.
Okay.
No. I'm pro Kawhi. I think the Raptors are going to win the series. But I mean, currently, right now, they're playing right now. I'm not sure what the score is, but I think you mentioned just a few minutes ago that the Sixers were up by at least like 15 or 17. So it looks like we're going to go to a Game 7 unless there's a magical Kawhi claw comeback. But the Sixers, honestly, they're an interesting team. Some games they come out and they shoot lights out. They get boards. They play really good defense. But then some days they are just not that great. I mean, you look at Game 4, Joel Embiid only scored, I think it was only like 13 points.
Something like that, yeah.
Only got, I think, 8 rebounds. And, that was about it. Coming from, their focal point of a superstar, I mean, their management, fan base, everyone's expecting him to at least get more than 20 points. Be that dominant scorer in the paint, being that versatile, center that can shoot, the stretch 5 that can shoot threes as well. I mean, we've seen him when he can shoot. We've seen him, stretch the paint, stretch the floor, and and really help his teammates out. But honestly, the Sixers, they're just kind of wishy-washy. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. So I want the Raptors to win, but if we see the Sixers that we've been seeing, recently with them turning things around, then they'll probably win the series.
So what do you think, building off of that, the formula for success is for the Sixers going back to Toronto for a Game 7? What do you think they have to do to win that game and ultimately the series?
Well, they need to play Markelle Fultz. No, I'm just joking.
Sorry, Orlando fans.
I know. If only they had him back.
Yeah, that whole thing, I was thinking about it. They got rid of the Feds way too quick. I really like that nickname.
I know. For them to win, I think they have to shoot better. I think the Raptors are a great defensive team. I think they really play as a team. They communicate well on the court. But players like Danny Green, the other one, I think his name is Siakam.
Pascal Siakam.
I mean, in my opinion, he's the most improved player.
Mm-hmm. He's a stud.
He's been playing lights out all year. I think he needs to have a strong game, but I think like Danny Green is another player.
Mm-hmm.
Him or even Marcus Hull, in the paint. They need to establish that post presence.
So you think Toronto needs to establish the post presence and Philly needs to shoot better.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I kind of listening to what you're saying with the Sixers, their formula for success really hinges on Joel Embiid, which is kind of a scary thought with how injury prone he is. But I was thinking about the roster, and yes, you have J.J. Redick and you have Tobias Harris, who are good shooters, but really a lot of this falls on Joel Embiid. If he plays well, the team has a great chance of winning. If he doesn't, then the team is almost assuredly going to lose, because I don't know about you, but I have lost a lot of faith in Ben Simmons this year, especially because he hasn't been able to work on a jumper in the mid-range or a free throw shot. He's almost a liability at times, especially going into a Game 7 where you can just play the paint and you've already neutralized him. And he's supposedly one of your best players. So I am down on the Sixers. Not that I don't believe Joel can have a great game. I just think, like you said, the Raptors are a better team. They play team defense, and they can shoot the 3-ball really well. And Kawhi Leonard, I mean, I don't know why people think he's or have underrated him the past few years. I think he's a stud. I think he's like one of the best players in basketball. So I'm still picking Toronto in 7. But yeah, any other thoughts about that series?
No, I think you put the nail in the coffin right there.
Put the nail in the coffin. So you think Toronto's going to win? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm hoping a magical comeback right now.
Yeah. Right. Wouldn't that be crazy? Like with a quarter left, come back down from like 20 or something ridiculous.
I mean, I'm going to check the score right now. They are, down 20.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, that was definitely a good call by me. But moving on, so we're going to talk about a team. First of all, we want to congratulate the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't think there's a team in the East I respect more than Milwaukee. I love Giannis, and they play really good basketball. But we want to talk about the Boston Celtics as well, being eliminated, and kind of a retrospect on the whole Kyrie experience, whether or not he's done there, what some issues have plagued the Celtics with Kyrie. We really want to just explore that and figure out what went wrong. So, Jason, what do you think the issue is in Boston? Why do you think they couldn't pull it out against Milwaukee and make it deeper into the playoffs?
I mean, I think it goes back to, I have my own opinions, and especially, as much as I would love to be a GM and make my own moves, I still think Gordon Hayward was, not a good sign for them.
Really?
Yeah. Not just because, obviously he got injured last year, so it's not fair to say, to count that year against him. But looking at, they signed him to, I think it was like a $45 million contract, or, it was a big contract.
It was a big contract for the time.
And what is he doing? What production, has he, contributed to the team? I don't think it's fair to give it to Kyrie, to give him all the blame. But I think it goes down to the production of Gordon Hayward. I don't think he really has been contributing that well. Because especially if you look at his position, he's small forward, and they drafted Jason Tatum, who's an up-and-coming star.
Who was.
So, it's hard to say because they're splitting minutes, and I don't think they have a solid rotation.
Yeah. See, I kind of disagree with you in the sense that I'm going to put a lot more blame on Kyrie, and here's why. I think Kyrie is very much like Kevin Durant in the sense that when he's in the game, a lot of players will defer to him and kind of change the way they play to suit his style of ISO ball. And I think Kevin Durant's the same way, but I just don't think that ISO ball is really a good fit for that Brad Stevens system. We thought he could adjust. We thought he could adjust his game a little bit better, but I think there's a difference visibly to me when Kyrie's off the court as opposed to on with the Celtics, similar to the Warriors. I just don't think it's a good fit. Now, does that mean I think the Boston Celtics are a better team without Kyrie? No, that's not the case, but they're not as cohesive as a unit, and I think a lot of those struggles you were talking about, Gordon Hayward, Jason Tatum especially, can be attributed to the lack of ball movement and really just playing a certain style of basketball that doesn't fit Brad Stevens' scheme nor his players. Because you look at Gordon Hayward and Jason Tatum specifically, those guys are system players, system fits to what Brad Stevens wants to do. I don't think they really play that almost LeBron-type role, being spot-up shooters as well. So what are your thoughts on the kind of system fit there?
Just thinking about Kyrie, I don't really see him as that ISO kind of player, but a part of me does see it in a little bit. Going back to why did he leave, Cleveland to go to Boston? He wanted to have that leadership responsibility. He wanted to be the guy that led his team. And last year, he during the regular season when he was healthy, he was pretty good. But then obviously got injured. I think he hurt his kneecap again.
Something like that, yeah.
And then missed the playoffs. And, even without him, the Celtics went all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals.
The Game 7.
Yeah.
With LeBron in the East. That's something.
And now, this year is the full year where, he comes back, he's healthy, and now he can be that leader that he wanted to be. But what was interesting is how halfway through the season, there was that right before All-Star Weekend. I think he apologized to LeBron James.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that.
And so I wonder now if he is questioning, his own kind of like leadership role, and like his style of play, kind of like how you talked about. So, I mean, I don't know. Sorry.
You don't know? Well, what do you think? Kyrie stays in Boston? Do you think he's done? And if he is, what are some possible landing spots for him?
Honestly, if his ego is as bad as what, if he really wants to be that alpha dog, and how he left Cleveland, if the Celtics pursue Anthony Davis, I feel like I can see that as a insult to him, saying like, am I not good enough? Am I not that, the guy that can lead this team, this young team? But if he decides to stay, maybe for his like legacy or for just the fact that Boston's just a good market, then, I think it'd be good for him there. But ultimately, I think he's going to stay. But it's going to be interesting to see, if his ego will get in the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Like you said, him calling LeBron might show a little bit more humility. Maybe his ego has taken a hit. I'm curious to see that too, because I really think I do think Kyrie's leaving. And I think he's going to end up with the Lakers. And you as a Lakers fan is like thinking that's great. But I think maybe throughout these 2 years he wanted to be the guy. He wanted to lead his own team. And things haven't gone as great as he probably had imagined. And I think, like you said, the All-Star weekend, him calling LeBron that moment of humility, I think that door is left open that they could play together again. And I do see Kyrie going to a big market. I think he would want to be in LA. We have heard reports that he's probably going to the Knicks, a big market, a basketball city. I think LA's the same thing, except you'll have the benefit of playing with LeBron. They've done it before, and they've had success. I do think that is a really real possibility. As a Lakers fan, do you want to see something like that work out, or do you think it'd cause too many problems? What do you think?
I don't think it would cause problems. I mean, the Lakers have their own problems, right now with management and obviously looking for a new head coach.
Mm-hmm.
The reports now is Ty Lue has moved on. Basically, he had the job, but then there was a whole they butted heads with management about who he wanted as his staff. So I think if Kyrie were to go to the Lakers, I think their season would, their overall like record would improve. But I don't know if that's going to fix LA's issues that they already have.
So what issues do you see them having as a Lakers fan?
I think it's just management. I don't think they have a clear direction of where they want to go. I think the past 4 or 5 years, they've tried to establish a direction, but, with already, with the team getting older, when Kobe was there, and just kind of like rebuilding, and then letting go of a young D'Angelo Russell, a young player, and drafting Alonzo Ball with the whole LeVar Ball, charisma and issues that, that
the eye roll.
Oh gosh. I mean, there's just so much drama, and I don't feel like they've really solidified an identity of who they are and who they want to be as an organization.
Do you think LeBron James contributes to a little bit of that drama? Because I know drama kind of follows him wherever he goes, and Lakers being in an unstable place, especially with the whole Magic Johnson thing, that was almost people turning some heads like, okay, what's really going on in this organization? Do you think he's going to help be part of the solution, or do you think he's just another part of the problem?
Well, he is getting old, so, he's not getting any younger, obviously. I think what he brings is a true leadership, role, especially because the roster for the Lakers are so young. But I really don't think he brings too much to the problem. He doesn't really contribute that much. The only thing I feel like he would, contribute to the problem is the fact that, the question is he coachable? And will he follow a coach, who he respects?
So basically you're saying one part of the solution is to find a coach that he respects, and that should solve a lot of problems, or at least a good portion of problems, at least on the court play.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel kind of the same way you do. I do think LeBron brings a little bit too much drama, especially this year. His leadership has been called into question a lot. But really, when it comes down to it, I think the thing that will fix these problems is winning. And if you can bring a guy like Kyrie in or Jimmy Butler or whatever and start to win, I think these issues become a lot less prevalent. Like we saw in Cleveland, there were a ton of issues there. Chemistry issues, LeBron creating drama, holding the franchise hostage for one-and-one contracts. I think really if they want to turn the ship around, they kind of have to win now. And that's kind of their direction, like you were saying.
Yeah. Well, moving things to the NFL, we've talked a lot about the NBA. And, the NFL season, not a lot's happening. It's the off season. We had the draft a little bit ago. But some news that, happened today is the Seahawks decided to release Cam Chancellor and Doug Baldwin because of some failed physicals. Mark, what do you think about that? I know you were high on them drafting DK Metcalf. It's on the opposite side of the ball, but where do you feel like the Seahawks are going? What kind of direction do you think they're heading towards?
I do not think they are in a rebuild. I know you had mentioned that previously before we started the podcast. Simply because you have Russell Wilson on your roster. When you have a quarterback like that, I never think you're in a rebuild. I think they're kind of going through a little bit of an identity shift, though, because Russell Wilson just got his massive contract, is making like $35 million a year or whatever, probably closer to 36. There's going to be a lot more put on his shoulders, which obviously has already been the case. So they're going to have to become more of an offensive team. They're going to have a pretty solid defense, but Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf are going to have to be something special, especially with the loss of Doug Baldwin. I think he was one of the most underrated receivers in football. He was always a hard worker. He would get open, and he was, for all intents and purposes, Russell Wilson's security blanket, even when they had Jimmy Graham. So that's going to be a huge loss, but I think the Seahawks are definitely trying to win now. I don't know if their window is closed yet, meaning they could be a Super Bowl team, but as we have seen, teams that pay quarterbacks a massive amount of money generally don't even make the playoffs. And I think, if you're a Seahawks fan, you should be a little bit worried about what's going on in that organization in terms of the football product that's being put on the field. Because with Russell Wilson needing so much of the cap, if they don't nail drafts, completely hit it out of the park, I don't see the team getting much better. What do you think about the whole Seahawks direction and Cam Chancellor and Doug Baldwin being released?
You brought up a good point where instead of it being a rebuild, it's more of an identity shift. Right now, when I see this report, I see an end of an era. I see an end of the Legion of Boom.
Oh, man.
For me, growing up in my teens, you had Michael Bennett, on the D line. You had Earl Thomas, on the corner, playing safety as well. You had Richard Sherman, obviously that shutdown corner that he was for a couple of years. And then you had big Cam Chancellor.
The enforcer.
I'm a Virginia Tech fan, and so, Cam Chandler, VT alum, pay my respects to you. Love you, bro. If you're ever listening to this, you're the man, dude.
Dude, he is the man. I don't care.
Man.
I'm a Raiders fan, and I'm like, Cam Chancellor is the freaking man.
So seeing this report, obviously, 2 years ago in 2017, he basically had that career-ending neck injury. And I remember reading an article saying how a year later, after looking at some of the tests that they did on his neck, that there was no healing. So seeing him released, wasn't really, I guess, surprising. And we kind of talked. You kind of explained that to me early on before we started. But Doug Baldwin, though, that's a little more surprising in my opinion. He was an undrafted receiver out of Stanford. And has been one of the most, I guess, in the past 8 years, one of the biggest names, at least receiver-wise, in Seahawk history. What he's been able to do and develop, and especially with, Russell Wilson, when he came in, Russell basically made Doug Baldwin his go-to guy. So I'm a little surprised by him, by them not sticking with him. Has he done enough to earn that loyalty? That does he deserve? the respect and loyalty from the organization. He's brought a lot. He helped contribute to that Super Bowl team.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it's a fair thing for them to release him? I mean, obviously they just drafted DK, so it's kind of a a trade away, but
yeah, it's a trade-off for sure, but I don't think of it as much as, hey, we're going to replace you, because I still think they could have used him. I think it's just more of a tragedy of his injuries, really. And honestly, as a football organization, you must know that his injuries are pretty serious, that he's probably not going to play football again. And if you were to keep him on your team, I know he failed the physical, but let's just say he passed or whatever, somehow was still on the team. Would you feel comfortable as an organization putting him out there knowing that his injuries are severe enough that he might not ever play football again, and throwing him out on the gridiron? I don't know if I am. I think it's more to do with that side of it. I think they probably had an indication a little bit earlier on in the process that this might be the case with his injury, and I think that's why you see a DK Metcalf go to the Seahawks, because they traditionally haven't drafted receivers that high. I think it's just really sad. It's a really sad day in football, because Cam Chancellor and Doug Baldwin are lunch pail guys. They're like guys who come in, they work super hard, and they're leaders. And it's really going to be sad to see them go, because I think both of them have probably laid their last down in the NFL.
Interesting. I mean, I still, even if he doesn't play, I still think he brings a good leadership aspect, a good mentor aspect to a young DK Metcalf, who hasn't adjusted yet to the NFL level. So, I mean, it is a sad day. I agree. But what also is sad is how, there's been reports, at least last month, how the whole Tyreek Hill incident with him, his fiance, and his child. If you haven't heard already, so Tyreek Hill, there was reports that he was abusing his son, and it went to trial, but there was no physical evidence that they could point and tie to Tyreek Hill that said that he actually did do it. But there's some pretty horrific audio files, that basically suggest and point to the fact that he did lay hands on his child. But we know the NFL, they want to, at least in my opinion, they're trying to clean up their act with domestic violence, and as well as just family issues like this when there's an altercation. Do you feel like they're going to punish him? And if you do think they will punish him, how long do you think it's going to be?
So this is kind of like a loaded topic off the bat. First thing, I want to throw sympathy to Tyreek Hill's son and his fiance, wife. No one should have to deal with that. That's just a horrible situation.
Sad, completely sad.
It is sad, but do I think the NFL is going to do anything? I think that might be the wrong question to ask a little bit. I think first you have to ask, is Kansas City going to do anything?
I was going to lead into that next
So I think drafting that receiver, Mecole Hardman, in the second round is a little bit telling of what they're thinking, because they've been presented with some of this evidence. They probably know a little bit more than we do, and most of the league does. The NFL is going into an investigation, and seeing how they handled the whole Kareem Hunt situation, even though that was not domestic violence and it was a video, so it was a little bit more blatant. I do think you have to ask, is Kansas City even going to keep Tyreek Hill around? My indication says no, and if the reason they will release him is because the NFL has something, and once they do, I think his ban is indefinite. We've seen that with Kareem Hunt. That wasn't domestic. I think domestic is like a whole nother level of seriousness to the NFL. I don't see him being reinstated anytime in the near future if he does get an indefinite suspension. What do you think, Jason?
No, I think you brought up a good point, and you beat me to my next question in my next segment, because it's important to know and ask what is Kansas City going to do. So far they haven't released him, so maybe they know more that we don't know on the fact of going against it. Maybe he didn't really have to play a part in it, but we don't know. I just think for the Kansas City Chiefs to show their commitment to being a upright organization that stands with, doing the right thing, upholding the law, and especially in the past, 4 or 5 years with the whole domestic violence, issues that we've, seen, and how the NFL's been cracking down, and teams, have been cracking down too. Not only, with the whole Kareem Hunt issue, but I mean, you look at the Ravens with Ray Rice, and if there's ever been, at least in recent years, any team that's had this kind of like issue, that most organizations are now, they're not going to tolerate it, and they want to uphold their culture in their locker room, as well as just who they are as an organization. So I think if the Kansas City Chiefs want to show that they're going to stick to their guns on the integrity of them as a team, as an organization, I think they probably will release him, unless there's some sort of knowledge that they know. It's hard. It's a hard situation to fathom, because you have two sides. You have the social side that's like, people are obviously always going to be against you if you keep them on the team, but then you have the justice side. They're doing the right thing. They're doing what they feel is best for their organization moving forward. So I think he'll probably be released. That's kind of my feel of where it's going to go. Whether the NFL will give him any punishment, I think they will, but we'll have to see. I mean, they convicted Ezekiel Elliott when there was no evidence, pointing him
Exactly.
to that, domestic violence or altercation. I guess it was his girlfriend, so it wasn't really a family member, but there was still probably something there. And he only got 6 games. So, and Kareem Hunt, with the video evidence, only got 8 games, or was it 10?
It was an indefinite suspension, and then they reinstated him for. It ended up being a total of 8.
8. Okay. So we'll have to see what the NFL decides to do, if they wanted to show their guns and crack down on what they believe.
Yeah. And so I'm going to pose the question to you. What do you think the Chiefs are waiting for, if they do feel confident that he is involved in it some way? What do you think they're waiting on to release him, or to punish him as an organization?
I think the front office is waiting to really see what Andy Reid has to say. I'm sure they've had conversations, but I feel like Andy Reid at this point has the full trust of the whole entire organization, from drafting Patrick Mahomes to being a offensive guru genius that he is. I think Andy Reid plays a big role, in this decision, and so I just feel like with them drafting, that receiver in the 2nd round, that might point towards that they're eventually going to release him. But I don't know. I think we should ask Andy Reid. We should ask who has the most trust, by management.
Yeah. So I ultimately think it'll be a group effort, group decision. I don't think it's going to be one guy, but I guess you and me both agree that he's going to end up getting released over this, and then probably a pretty hefty punishment by the NFL. And I think the other interesting thing that you talked about is the whole Ezekiel Elliott thing. I think that plays a big factor into this too, because with the Ezekiel Elliott thing, there wasn't really any hard evidence enough to convict him in a court of law, but the NFL found enough to convict him on the football field, if that makes sense. And I think that muddies this whole thing up, and I think that's why we're talking about it. It could go either way, but I think the NFL is probably going to follow what it's done in the past and give a pretty hefty punishment to Tyreek Hill. So anyways, moving on, we're going to talk about a lot of receivers today. If you haven't noticed, our NFL thing, it's all about receivers. This next thing is in response to what Odell Beckham Jr. said. He said he envisioned the Browns being the new Patriots, and we really want to explore that, whether or not we think that's a good idea. He said it. And so, Jason, I want you to start us off on this. What do you think he really meant by the Browns being the new Patriots?
Looking at it from Odell's perspective, you have an up-and-coming quarterback, Baker Mayfield, huge fan. You have, if I was Odell Beckham, you have one of your best friends at wide receiver on the other side,
Yeah.
across from you, kind of
Playing in the slot at
playing in the
times.
slot, but he's that gel guy that just keeps everyone together, keeps that camaraderie together. And then you have the addition of Kareem Hunt. I mean, that does play a factor, as well as oh gosh,
The tight end.
Who's their running back?
What's his name? Nick
The
Chubb.
rookie Chubb, yeah.
And then don't forget David Njoku, who's a stud.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this offense on paper, I don't mind him saying that. He's very passionate on the football field, and he sees a lot of potential. I think that statement is more of referring to the potential that he sees and the excitement of the whole Browns organization. I mean, you look at him. If you were to ask him like 4 years ago, would the Browns ever be would there ever be this much excitement going into Cleveland? You'd say no.
Not unless it's LeBron James.
But after last year, with seeing how the organization has turned this team around, turned this whole organization around, turned the city around. I mean, you had LeBron. LeBron left. So, Cleveland was like, oh, great, all we have is the Browns now. But now people are even more excited for the Browns. I mean, Baker Mayfield has really been a stud. Freddie Kitchens has been a great offensive coordinator for Baker Mayfield so far. And so far we're seeing a lot of excitement. So I'm with Odell. I hope they become the new Patriots of the AFC, and we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting what he said. And I'm going to take it in the negative way because I do not think he should have said that. And here's why. Expectations are really high for the Browns for the first time in who knows how long. And there's a lot of buzz around Baker Mayfield, the quarterback, their offense. They do look loaded on paper. I completely agree with you. They have potential to just be explosive and dynamic on offense. But the only thing is, last year, people didn't expect the Browns to be what they were. They didn't expect them to win any games, really. People were saying, hey, is Hugh Jackson going to go 0-16 again, and making jokes about that and mocking them the number one pick again. They didn't. They had the opportunity last year to sneak up on people. And so now this year, they're actually a pretty good team, and they have a lot of hype around them. I don't think they're going to be able to sneak up on teams this year, and I think Odell saying that they are going to be the new Patriots essentially puts a lot of unnecessary pressure on your second-year quarterback, your first-year head coach, and a whole town that's been conditioned to losing. I think a more appropriate thing to say would have been, I'm really excited about what these Browns can do. I think we have something special here. Calling them the new Patriots, I think, adds this whole level of expectation that really I don't think they can live up to. I mean, the Patriots have been this solid winning organization, winning 11 games for the past 20 years. I don't put the Browns in that category. I don't think that they can even prove that they're the new Patriots next year. So I think Odell might be really excited. I think he has to be a little bit careful because he might be writing a bill that Kitchens and Baker Mayfield might not be able to cash in them as a whole team.
I see what you're saying. I still think it's innocent. I don't think it's anything to really make a big deal out of. I will say, I mean, last year they finished 7-8-1,
Mm-hmm.
third in their division. I see them going to number 2. I think actually Baltimore is going to be number 1 in their division. I think Lamar Jackson can develop and be the leader that they need him to be and get the production that they need. But I really believe that Cleveland's going to make the playoffs. You heard it here. I'm going to speak it into existence like LeVar Ball. The Cleveland Browns are going to be in the playoffs next year.
So you have the Ravens 1 and then Cleveland 2. You think the Steelers are 3 and Cincinnati 4?
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's a whole kid. Now we have to talk about this. We didn't plan this, but I think you opened up a whole new can of worms. Honestly, I think the Ravens are the team that can let us down the most next year because Lamar Jackson was very dynamic in what he did, but he really needs to develop as a passer, and it was pretty evident during that playoff game against the Chargers. He was not himself, and he wasn't going through progressions as well. He wasn't reading the defense well, and he kind of looked lost out there. I think that's what good game planning will do. Remember, that was the second time that the Chargers got to play Lamar Jackson within the same month. I think that he's a candidate to take a step back. I still think the Steelers are king in the AFC North, and I hate saying that as a Raiders fan, but I mean, you have a very good head coach in Mike Tomlin, and you have a proven quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger. I think that'll win out. I do agree with you, though, in Cleveland. I think they are going to go second in their division. I think I like Baker Mayfield. I believe in the kid, man. I think he's a stud. Have too many weapons to finish anywhere but second. And then, sorry, Cincinnati, you guys are the seller in both of our minds. I do not believe in the Bengals whatsoever. I know they have a new head coach, but to me, it's not going to change until Andy Dalton's out of the building.
Yeah. I mean, I think Lamar Jackson, I know he needs to improve as a passer, and I think he will. I really believe it. I mean, we know he can do with his feet. You know, we know he can run, and he is fast.
He is a fast guy.
I mean, he is the Michael Jackson, or not Michael Jackson, the Michael Vick, of our generation right now.
Do you think him or Kyler Murray is faster?
Oh, I take Lamar.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, any day. Okay, anyways,
Any
continue.
day, I take Lamar. I mean, but Kyler is a better passer, so he kind of does have that complete package. But
Yeah, he
that's
does. That's neither here nor there.
Yeah. But I really think the Ravens are going to be number one. I think their defense is solid with the addition of Earl Thomas. I think that really fills a hole in their defense. And also him coming in brings a leadership aspect, that they've always had, it seems like. For the longest time, when I was growing up, there was Ray Lewis. I mean, he brought and set the tone for that team. When he retired, when they won the Super Bowl, riding off into the sunset, there was Terrell Suggs. And I think Ed Reed was there for at least one more year.
Something like that, yeah.
And, and then Ed Reed retired. He left, and then there was just Terrell Suggs and Haloti Ngata, Like these, players who are they are leaders. They're veterans. And then, Terrell Suggs just left to go to Arizona, and now they bring in Earl Thomas. So I think the Ravens know their identity. They know their blueprint. They've always been a defensive team first, and then an offensive team. And I think, with Lamar Jackson, I think he's going to develop. I'm sure he's going to make mistakes. I mean, we're going to see some bad games. And
Some wobblers.
I mean, last year's playoff game, the one that they lost, he did not play that well at all.
Got exposed a little bit.
He did. But you also have to play in the fact that he was a rookie quarterback. There's a lot of jitters, nerves. You're in the playoffs, where everything matters most. So I think seeing the tape of last season and understanding that he needs to be more of a leader and keep his composure more. I think we're going to see that more in the pocket, but also for him using his feet.
Yeah, I hope so. I really like Lamar Jackson. I'm not as confident that he will develop into that as you are, but I really hope he does. And I think the thing you mentioned about the Ravens, last thing we'll probably say about them is that they do have their identity. There are two things I always trust the Ravens to be able to do: is stop the run and control the clock now. And I think they're going to win a decent amount of games with that. I don't think Lamar's going to take that crazy jump. I think he'll be good, but not great. But still, third in the division, I think. But anyways, moving on. That'll bring us to the end of our podcast. Is there anything else you would like to add? Any interesting stories that you like over the past week? Or you're going to wrap this up?
No, just feed Zeke. Just want to give him a shout out because he's paying for the funeral for a kid who was shot in his school. And so just want to tip my hat off to you for that, for doing that and that kind gesture, and appreciate you, bud.
Yeah, that's a class act right there. I can always get behind something like that. So I'm not going to say feed the Zeke, but good on you, Zeke. But anyways, we'll be back next week talking about more NBA playoffs, more NFL news as it comes. And thank you guys for tuning in. You guys have a wonderful day. Bye.